Welcome to the Greenway with Mac, a channel dedicated to active transportation. We spent the 2021-22 school year living in Valencia, and I biked to school with my son each day. You can learn a lot about a city through the lens of a 7-year-old and his old man, so I wanted to share the experience. This video shows 3 versions of the commute through the city center and highlights my approach to choosing the safest route. The dark blue lines on this map represent protected bike lanes. This yellow line highlights the ring road around the city center. Notice how there are not really protected lanes inside the ring. I'll come back to that idea in a bit. The first route takes the most direct street to the main road circling the city, which has a 2-way protected bike lane. The street we are on is one-way and pretty narrow, so cars do not have the ability to make a dangerous decision to pass us. This design decision demonstrates how street design beats speed limits and other rarely enforced laws to keep all road users safe. The reason for choosing this road for the commute was because once we entered the protected bike lanes, we had them the entire route to school. Coming from North America, it was a dream to have a network like Valencia's, and I studied the map intently to get around the city in these lanes. In the case of this commute, choosing the protected lanes meant adding about a half a mile to the ride each way, which was 1.75 miles total. But even with protected bike lanes, it was a little scary to ride with a 7-year-old because of so many intersections. We cross about 15 streets by going this way, and even though drivers were cautious in most cases, it's still a risk and requires constant attention from both of us. I would lead when we were new to the commute, but this video was recorded after we had been biking these streets for 9 months together, so I let him take the lead when he was comfortable. Plus, I encouraged him to lead on these days so we could see the ride through his eyes. As Americans in the city, it took us a while to learn where to put our trash. Instead of taking out our cans to the street once a week, everyone in the neighborhood takes bags out to these dumpsters, which get picked up multiple times a week. It was a little strange at first, but it was nice never to forget when trash day was. This is an idea that New York City needs to steal to solve its trash problem. On this street, they are also serving as extra protection from cars. You'll see them everywhere in Spanish cities. Take a look at Lucas's head as we approach this intersection. I made sure he knew to constantly scan his surroundings. Watch how confident and calm he is when this car pulls out of a garage. These bike lanes were almost always busy. It didn't matter what time of day it was. Scooters, bikes, and wheelchairs circulated through town smoothly and safely, like a healthy system does. I'm not gonna lie, this section here always made me a little nervous, especially going in the reverse direction. The bike lane is protected by these concrete curbs, but drivers did speed up this road like it was a raceway, and it still didn't feel like enough protection. I felt much safer when the bike lane was protected by parked cars or the dumpsters. At this big crosswalk, we reach a spot that overlaps with the second variation of the school commute, so this is where we will stop for the first one. The second route takes a different approach. Instead of leaving the city center as soon as possible, this route wanders through the small streets, sharing the road with vehicles. The streets are usually tight, one-way streets, and cars are constrained by the tight spaces to go slowly. In Spain, many of these types of streets are called ciclorutas, or cycle routes. At first I was annoyed by the lack of bike lanes in the city center, but over time, as the city center has removed more and more cars, these cycle routes make more and more sense. In many cases, these streets become occupied primarily with bikes and pedestrians. We chose this route mainly because the Central Market was under construction for most of the year that we were here. The third option will actually take the route that passes just east of us and next to the Central Market. Both options will ride on the street on bus and taxi routes for several blocks, and on this day the road was quite busy. It hadn't been this messy the dozens of times we had previously done it, but I would guess that some people opted for their car on this rainy day. This is a good example of how many streets are used in this city. Pedestrians commonly take the street rather than confining themselves to the sidewalk. Bikes are permitted to go in either direction, and it's a delightful dance as everyone weaves through one another. In almost all cases, people were courteous no matter how they were getting around, and this played an important part in the system working so well. This is where we will overlap with the bus route for a few blocks. I took the lead because this day was busier than most. The rain was a factor, but as you'll see in a second, this could also be because the city was setting up for its annual Fallas festival. This block is where we would catch the bus if we were taking it to school, which we did if Lucas's bike was in the shop or if the weather was horrendous. I thought it would be fun to shoot this video during this week because the city was setting up for Las Fallas, which is an annual celebration held in March and is a celebration of the arrival of spring. The festival features a wide range of events, including colorful processions, street parties, fireworks displays, parades, and traditional dances. One of the main attractions of the festival is the construction and burning of massive sculptures made of wood, papier-mâché, and other materials, which are called ninots. These sculptures are created by local artists and are often satirical representations of political figures, celebrities, or other prominent individuals. Throughout the festival, locals and visitors alike take to the streets to celebrate and enjoy the festivities. The streets are lined with food stalls selling traditional Valencian cuisine, such as paella and buñols, and there is live music and dancing in the city's main squares. Our apartment was right next to a music stage, and we didn't sleep until about 4 a.m. all week. This next section is an interesting one, as cars are forced to turn left or right. On bikes, we are able to filter into this plaza and continue straight. At the end of the plaza is another section that was a little concerning to cross and required extra attention. Drivers have a flashing yellow and are able to move from our left to right, but they must obey the bike and pedestrian signal. The red paint is for bikes, and even though we had the right-of-way, this situation felt like the riskiest part of the commute because it relied on the driver's ability to see us and observe our right-of-way. Many times we arrived when it was red, and it was no issue to cross once it turned green. What made this situation sketchy today was that some drivers had already gone through the intersection, so it's like you have to break Newton's first law of motion to get drivers to stop. In North America, this would be really dangerous. But in Spain, drivers were much more courteous. Plus, there are so many more people on foot and wheels, so they were more likely to expect people to be crossing and were prepared to stop. And if you hadn't noticed yet, that same intersection is where we started to overlap with the first commute. This time we have an up-close look at the food vendors, street decorations, and ninots. The one across the street was my personal favorite, which had a Star Wars theme. Stick around for the third commute, and you'll see an up-close view of the Star Wars characters. This also means that we are overlapping with that one, so let's hop back to the start and follow what I think is the best, safest trip. Version 3 of this commute starts down this same street. Instead of heading to the right at the bottom of this block, we are going to veer to the left, which takes us to the opposite side of the central market. In addition, this final piece will cover the last leg of the commute, which passes the Bullring and Nord Station and will serve as a tour of the Rusafa neighborhood pre-Fallas. Along the way, we have a much closer view of the ninots, kiosks, and decorations. The monuments themselves cut off many intersections to cars, which I felt made it even more safe in the city center. But even when it wasn't Fallas, these streets were relatively calm, serving many more rollers and pedestrians than drivers. The street and plaza on this side of the Central Market was under construction for most of 2021, and most of it was finishing up by the time this was recorded in March of 22. One of the main improvements was ripping out the asphalt curbed street that cars used and replacing it with these stones that were at the same level as the sidewalks. This is a proven design choice that allows cars to interact with bikes and peds, but removes a dedicated space for them. Instead, the design indicates to drivers that they are guests in this area and must proceed slowly and cautiously. It's early, but very soon this plaza will be filled with people, from the 10:30 a.m. beer and sandwich, to the 2 p.m. menu del dia at lunch, to the late-night dinners and drinks. This plaza will buzz with activity and vibrancy that is so common in great European cities and pretty rare in North American ones. The markets, cafes, attractions, and open space are magnets for people that stimulate the area and pump its cultural and economic heart, no matter what age. One thing that sticks with me is how many senior citizens walk to the market, enjoy a meal out with friends, and engage with children at the playground. Lucas used to always look for Pepita, a 90-year-old woman born less than 100 yards from our apartment, who showed up each afternoon with Spanish lollipops called chupa chups. They are an important and valued part of the community fabric. It should not be any surprise that Spanish seniors live over 7 years longer than Americans. This open area is Plaza de Ayuntamiento, or Government Plaza. There are several great plazas in the city center, but this seems to be the main one. This is the reverse direction that was covered in my video from the high-speed rail station and should offer some contrast in both direction and activity. Each day, the Mascaleta takes place here during Fallas. This is where a near-constant barrage of firecrackers are blown off, in addition to an unfathomable amount of smoke, which hides the surrounding buildings from view. This is the main government hall to our right, which was a VIP spot for the Mascaletas. Inside this fence is where the explosions took place, and in the background is the absolutely stunning post office. Take the time to walk inside and look up at its breathtaking dome if you're visiting the plaza. You need to be really careful here because drivers may be moving quickly from your right. This section is in the road, but buses and taxis use this same lane and are generally courteous and patient with people on bikes. Since so many people here get around by bike, they are used to riders using these sharrows. The road splits up ahead, so we are holding the left lane to make our turn. Just before the intersection, Lucas points out the Star Wars ninot. The North Station is an amazing connection for getting around Valencia proper and its larger neighbors such as Gandia, Castelló, Xàtiva, Buñol, and Barcelona. Matadors have been entertaining crowds at this bull ring since 1859. While many Spanish municipalities have banned the killing of bulls in their arenas, Valencia is a city that holds on to the tradition. They don't happen often, but are part of the Fallas celebration. The site is most commonly used to host concerts and non-lethal bullfights. There is a museum on site and is definitely worth a visit. This floating bus stop is something we saw in my Paris video. The bike lane slips past the bus stop on the right, which prevents potential conflicts with buses. It's safer for us and improves the efficiency of the buses. This is a really nice protected bike lane because the train station prevents streets from crossing it, so it feels really safe to ride on this stretch. Drivers can use the street adjacent to us, but the lane is thin, which is a proven way to slow them down. This next intersection was occasionally a hostile place for us. Drivers at this intersection, for some reason, did not always yield to us, so we had to be extra careful, and I usually led. I was able to look back and see that it was clear, so he took the lead today. This path is on the sidewalk from here all the way to the school. The neighborhood we are in is called Rusafa and has become one of the more popular spots in recent years. Once a more bohemian neighborhood with local workshops, it has gentrified and is now one of the more common areas for expats. Americans might think of this as the hipster area of Valencia, where you're more likely to find record stores and fancier coffee shops. Nearly every intersection has a Ninot monument to see up close. These all but liberate the streets from cars, so it's one large pedestrianized neighborhood. During the day, Rusafa is interesting, but it really comes to life at night. These temporary signs light up and really add to the excitement and charm of the streets. I think there's a lesson here with the bike lane. All they did was add some paint, but it's a good short-term solution that gives people on bikes a defined space. There was room on the sidewalk, and it seems to be a common strategy when possible, and it worked really well for us the other 50 weeks of the year that the festival was not taking place. As for now, it was a little inconvenient to get around, but it was all good. This video is a little different than the normal ones, and I'd like to know your thoughts on it. Add a comment if you'd like to see more like it. Valencia is an amazing place for bikes, and it really surpassed my expectations. It's only getting better, and I'm jealous and really excited for you if you're watching this video in preparation for your own journey. Please take care of it until I get back. If this video was helpful to you, let me know by hitting the like button. And subscribe if you don't want to miss the next bike commute. I'll see you on the next city tour.